Hello, everyone. I am Patty Zor, your host of the Better Book Launch podcast. And joining me today is Aurora Gregory. Aurora is a speaking coach, business strategist, and co-author of the book Get Picked.
Oh, I'm so excited. It's so cool to see you with I think as an author, you never lose the excitement of seeing someone hold your book.
Oh gosh, yes. Well, I can't wait to talk a little bit more about your book and what you do. And Aurora and I, we met at a conference about a year ago and actually enjoyed a wonderful fireworks show together. It was such a great way to start off a friendship. And it really is such a blessing to know you, Aurora. I am so excited for our conversation today.
Me too. I remember, I think we were getting off the bus on our way to that magical fireworks show, and someone had met you and I had met the same person earlier, and as we were getting off the bus, it was like, hey, you two need to know each other, and shoved us together, and we walked over to the fight where we were going to be watching this magical show and had a great conversation, and then got to watch it together, and we've had just such wonderful connection ever since. So I'm excited to be just part of this podcast, and looking forward to having a great conversation today.
Yes. Well, so many authors want to get on stages. And if you don't, you should want to get on stages. And maybe we'll talk about why in a little bit here. But first, can you tell us really what inspired you to become a speaking coach?
Oh my gosh. Well, my kind of entry into the speaking world started when I was 14. I was a finalist in a speech contest. And I didn't win that contest. And it's funny, all these years later, I can still remember the exact thing I did that probably cost me that win. It's so funny how those things stick with you. But what I walked away from that experience with is recognizing the power that the person with the microphone actually has, to really command an audience, to share a story that just really grips people and causes them to kind of lean in and want to know more. Really, just the power of the person with the microphone to share a transformation that can move and inspire people. And so, it really kind of kicked off just a lifelong love of the spoken word. I ended up going to college and getting a communications degree, and I've been in marketing and communications since ever since.
Were you always confident on stage, even at the age of 14?
It's so funny. I'm going to answer it with a global no. As a matter of fact, I remember being extremely nervous right before that final contest, my last stint as a semifinalist. I was not. I think those nerves and butterflies, I don't know that they ever quite leave. I'm thinking about all the speakers I've ever worked with, and I don't know that I can think of one that doesn't still get some of that nervous butterfly energy. There's just something about that just, I think, kind of stays with you. Back then I remember being incredibly nervous, and I remember my mom having to really kind of hold my hands and say, like, you're okay and you can do this. And now I think as a speaker, whether it's coaching myself right before a speaking engagement or trying to encourage someone who is really struggling with those nervous butterflies, is using some tools and some mindset things that can allow you to kind of anchor in a little bit and actually use that nervous energy to propel you forward into giving a really connected and dynamic presentation. So there's a way to make it work for you and not against you.
Oh my gosh, that is good to know. I am still working on, public speaking and getting on stages. And I know we're even going to have some more conversations, but I've been speaking in front of, it was when I was in the corporate world and I had to get up and present, and just feeling that lump in my throat and almost like literally choking, like just fighting to get the words out. So
It does feel like when that moment hits, when it just grabs you, it's like all of a sudden you're like the saliva glands in your mouth just all of a sudden stop working, and they're just replaced by cotton. It just, sometimes that just happens. And, like I said, there's some ways to work with that and to guard against that, but it happens to everyone. I had a speaking engagement a couple of years ago. It was the last of probably 3 speaking things that I had to do in a very short period of time, like probably 3-hour-long presentations, very close together, like within 2 days. And I knew when I got up for that last one, I thought, okay, your voice is going to go on you. And about in the middle of the presentation, the cotton showed up.
Oh, no.
A coughing attack ensued. Like, it was like every speaker's a speaker's worst nightmare actually happened to me, and I had to, kind of take a little bit of my own advice and manage it. So now I give the advice with a lot more sympathy and a lot more empathy.
Oh gosh. So it even happens to the pros. Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Well, can you tell us a little bit on why an author might want to look into speaking on stages?
Sure. I mean, I've always felt that that an author should be a speaker and speakers should be authors. So
Mm.
if you're listening to us today, you're one or the other. And so if you're a speaker and you've got a powerful message and you haven't written a book, it's really something that you need to really lean into and consider taking your message and forming it into a book, into book content. And if you are an author and you have poured all of your heart and soul into writing your very best book and it's now published, one of the most important ways that you can connect with readers is to give your book your voice. I think readers so much want to connect with the people who write the words that they love so much. If you're a nonfiction author, you've written a book that has given people a transformation, given them guidance, provided them wisdom. You might have entertained them with your memoir. I mean, there's so much that you have done for a reader with your words. And when that happens as a reader, the one thing that I want to do is I want to know more about that author. I want to connect with them more deeply. I want to come deeper into their world. And we make that possible as authors. We make that possible by taking to the stage. And, we use that word stage and the microphone. I totally get it. Being the sole person on a platform with a microphone, with what feels like a million eyeballs focused solely on you, can be very intimidating.
Yeah.
But the world today, because of this digital world that we live in, there's a stage for everyone. A podcast is a stage. Being able to do a video interview with someone is a stage. This conversation that you and I are, Patty, are having today, this is a stage for us.
Absolutely.
And so I just have to encourage, do not let the connection that you've built with your book stop at just the words. Your readers want to go deeper with you. And if you're looking to use your book to launch you into something deeper, whether it's a business or a consulting career or whatever it is that your book has the potential to move you deeper into, speaking will only help you. I share this with so many people. There is something magical about being able to say that you are an author and a speaker. Author, very powerful. Speaker, very powerful. But author and speaker, that's magical.
Oh yeah.
And so there's something about that makes it makes so many things easier when you are trying to promote and market the message that you have.
For sure. Yeah. And one of the things that I encourage my authors to do is at the back of their book, add a speaking page back there. Let people know that you speak, that you're available to speak. Because if you don't tell them, they're never going to know. Right. And someone may read your book and be like, oh my gosh. You never know. It could be a CEO of a major corporation who thinks that your message will resonate with his employees. And I think there's just so many opportunities. So I love encouraging readers, like, put that speaker page in the back. Let people know that you do this, you offer this as a service. So, and as you can also get paid to speak in situations like that as well.
Absolutely. As authors, And I know this was true for me. I'm also an author, and I know when I wrote my book, there were a lot of things that I knew, and there were a lot of things that I didn't know. And one of them, I always jokingly say I wrote a public speaking book, and it never occurred to me that I would do as much public speaking as I get to do now. But as authors, we can really use our books to, build a really well-rounded business. And I think in a lot of ways we need to think of our books that way as part of a business that we're building. It may be the very strong foundation for the business, but it needs to be that. And what makes a great business is having revenue streams. And one of those revenue streams can and should be speaking fees and income from speaking.
Absolutely. So what is a great first step to helping authors get picked?
Well, one of the things that has to happen first is, as an author, there's some legwork that you've done already in creating your book. And one of the things that you've done is you've identified who your ideal reader is. You know who that person, the person that you wrote your book for. I know for some of you, you probably wrote your book with one person in mind. Like you could imagine, or maybe it was an actual person who you knew needed the book that you were writing, and that there were lots of those people out there that needed the book you were writing. So the fact that you have that in place really kind of gives you a leg up on trying to find where those speaking gigs are, because what you can now do is go and research where those people gather. What events do they attend? What online groups are they parts of? What podcasts do they listen to? Where does that group of people get together? Because wherever that is where your speaking opportunities are. So you can use the group that you speak to or that you wrote for, whether that's corporate executives or stay-at-home moms or moms who are CEOs or whoever that group is. You can use that and go out to search for conferences for that group, podcasts for that group. You can go into communities like Facebook and Reddit to go and search for those communities that they're a part of. You can go into Instagram and find what hashtags do they follow. And what happens in those communities? What happens in those places? They talk, they chatter, they talk about what events they're going to, what podcasts they're listening to. They talk about other experts that they follow. This is all tons of research that give you the path you need to follow to get on the stages that matter to them so that you can continue to build connections.
Oh gosh. Well, I love too how in your book you even cited some sources that readers can look up to find various conferences. So I thought that was so valuable. I didn't even know that those sites existed.
There's so much information out there, and there's lots of places where information like that is kind of aggregated. And I can't encourage you enough, like, use that. But as we know in our digital world, things change so quickly. You can there's always going to be the events that are planned well in advance, but then there are those things like, and again, I'm kind of speaking to that author who maybe is a little bit shy, not quite sure, not quite ready for live on stage, but you're ready for things like virtual events. Maybe you want to, do the podcast guesting path a little bit, for a little bit now while you work up to live stages. Those types of places, like, those are what you're going to find when you go to those places that people are gathering. For those other types of events, like if you're ready for those live stages, absolutely research those live events. Find out, like, once you learn what events and opportunities exist, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to do some research, and you're going to figure out, how do they pick their speakers? You're going to do some emailing, and you're going to ask some questions. I'm interested in offering a proposal for a talk at your next conference. How do you pick your speakers? When does that start? They're going to provide some information to you, and you're going to follow their directions to the letter. A podcast host is going to let you know, like, hey, this is how it goes, or here's the form you need to fill out. Follow their directions to the letter, Be the speaker that they've always dreamed of having on their stage, and it starts with your initial contacts. But you can find that information. It's out there, and your people, the people that you wrote for, are getting together to connect with each other, and you can be part of that connection.
Oh gosh, yeah. And in fact, one of the things I like to tell my authors is a great place to get started, to start talking about your book, just kind of warming up. There's local meetups and they happen, there, I mean, there's several that happen in every community. But I mean, at least the same ones happen monthly. And I say, like, get in, just start talking at meetups. You can start testing your message,
Yep.
getting feedback, right? And I think as a community, we all love supporting other community members. And just like you're saying, those community members probably know other people who could refer you, so on and so forth. It really is interesting
Absolutely.
how, what's that saying? Your network is your net worth. It's so true.
It really is true. And I think when you come to, networking opportunities, like when you come with, I always love the idea of coming with generosity and wanting to help and to serve as much as you can. Um, Things just have a way of reciprocating back to you. We're all, obviously interested in making connections that can help to build what it is that we have dreamed of building. But that generosity, there's nothing like, whether it's from the stage, or going to a networking event, be as generous as you can, because I really do believe that that makes an impression on people. And whether they're inviting you to their stage or whether they are making a referral, you want them to be able to say, hey, Susan was great. Like, I met her at this meetup and she was fantastic. She just shared so many interesting things with me. I think she'd be great for your podcast. I think she'd be great as a speaker at your next corporate event. You want to be able to share it, to want people to be able to say that with confidence about you.
Oh, yeah. And I just love how you said come from a place of service. Same thing when I'm talking to authors about launching their books. I love to tell them, like, we'll even ideate ideas for like free resources they can offer that really help that reader make that transition and take that next step. And by offering those free bonuses or free resources, whether they're downloads or videos or audio files, you can ask your potential reader or readers to opt in. So now you're identifying who's reading your book, because as you know, books get passed along, right? We leave them in little libraries or we donate them. Books last forever. We don't throw books away.
No, no, we don't. We just find new homes for them.
We do. Yeah. So you never know who could be reading your book. So in addition to those speaker pages, why not leave a link to a website that has some free resources, but ask your reader to leave their name and email to get access to that. But always, yeah, just give that value. Don't just do some silly download, right? With a 10-point checklist. I really like to say, make it really valuable, something
Exactly.
that this reader is going to really enjoy, that because then you're also building that know, like, and trust factor with them as well.
So important. And, I love the idea of, I know for me, I would love for every person who hears me to want to work with me personally. And sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. But regardless, whoever I get a chance to speak to, if I get to speak to an audience, if you can create a transformation in your business, in your life, in something that matters to you, using something I've shared with you, and we never, like, you take that piece and turn it into something, and we never get a chance to work together, I'm thrilled by that. I want that transformation for people. And I just have come to a place of believing, like, when you come at that place of serving your audience well, all the other things fall into place. I never worry about giving away, quote unquote, the secrets. If you want to know my framework or process, I will tell you. And those people who want to take it and run with it, I want you to do that. But if you listen, sometimes it's just a matter of like, okay, she's got a framework. I think I want to work with her. Sometimes that's exactly what you're sharing, when you're able to talk so clearly about the message that you have in your book. So use your book. Don't feel like as a speaker, if you've published your book and you're ready to take that step into speaking, you're not reinventing the wheel. You've already created your message. Now it's just a matter of kind of distilling it down into the piece that you want to share from the stage. You are so far ahead of the game as an author, to be ready and prepared to start pitching yourself to stages.
Yes. And gosh, you just made me think of something else too. A lot of times I'll hear authors say, like, on social media or in speaking, well, I don't want to give away too much that's in the book because then people won't buy the book. And I said, that's not true.
Not
You
true.
can share it all, put it out there, right? Nobody is hanging on to every word you're saying. And if they are, I say good for you. Like, that's amazing, because don't we want everyone to do that? But the reality is, right? Unless you're a major, major influencer, right? No, nobody's hanging on. And even those guys, I don't even know that somebody's catching every single post that
Well,
they're putting out there.
and it's interesting, like my signature, I guess, presentation from the stage is really, it's a teaching type of presentation. I'm at heart, I'm a teacher, and I
Hmm.
love to teach people how to do things. And I teach my framework of creating irresistible speaker pitch proposals and copy from the stage. And I'll never forget, speaking at several events and teaching my framework. And then I was invited to host a table at the back of the room where people could buy my book if they wanted. And honestly, I sold more books. They just heard they just heard everything that was in the book. But when you do your job from the stage, and whatever that looks like for you, whether that's a motivational presentation based on maybe your memoir, or it's actually a teaching presentation like I deliver, when you've done your job and people feel so full from what you've given them, the one thing they want is they want to be able to take a piece of you with them.
Hmm.
And your book is makes that possible. So even though you may have taught everything that being able to take your book with them allows them to do that, to take a piece of you with them. And here's the other thing: you can teach people what it is that you do, but the majority of those people will still not be able to do what you do,
Yeah.
because you have a unique way of approaching it. You've been doing it yourself for a longer period of time. That muscle for you is uniquely strengthened to be able to execute in a very efficient kind of way. People who have heard what you've delivered for the first time don't have that muscle built up. And so I always describe it this way. It's a little bit like hearing someone's memoir story of how they climbed Mount Everest, and they describe all the things in their backpack and everything that happened on the trip, and they describe what it felt like to summit. You cannot take an audience member, put them on a plane, drop them at a base camp in Nepal, and expect that they're going to be able to summit Mount Everest based on your presentation. Right? There's a lot more that goes into it. There's a wide gap between hearing what you do and having people being able to execute what you do. So don't be afraid to share what you do in fear that they may take it and just do it without you. Most people are not going to be able to do it without you. They're going to need something. At the minimum, they're going to need a copy of your book.
That is such a great analogy. And that should give everyone the confidence right there to just go out and share your story and just put it all out there. Right. Because you can tell me exactly what I need to do to climb Mount Everest, but you drop me off at the base of the mountain, I'm not going to know.
Yeah, your first thought is
Right.
what am I supposed to do? What's supposed to happen next? There's a lot of fear and panic that comes. So I may feel super energized, but I'm not going to be able to do it, and I'm certainly not going to be able to put that pack on my back and make that summit happen. So it's the same thing with all of the content, all of the juicy good stuff that we all have to share. Most people cannot. In my experience, in my life of speaking, and I've been an author. My book came out about 5 years ago. My framework has refined a little bit, but for the most part, it stayed roughly the same. And I've spoken on live stages, podcasts. In my speaking life of the last 5 years, I've only had one person be able to take my framework and execute on it. And
Wow.
the only reason I know that she did is because she and I met through a random connection in a Facebook group. We did a quick coffee call. I explained the framework to her, and she said, "Well, are you charging me for this coaching call?" And I said, "No, no charge here. Listen, you go, if you can go and make this happen, go ahead, and I want you to be successful. Go do it. Write up your pitch. If you want to send it to me, I'll gladly take a look at it. If it needs work, I will tell you how much it will cost to pay to have me work on it. But if you've nailed it, I'll tell you." And
Oh,
sure enough, she followed through. She wrote her pitch, she sent it to me, and sure enough, she did everything she was supposed to do and she nailed it. And I told her she did. And what's interesting is she then subsequently became a coaching client of mine. And so she still became a client. So all this to say, don't be afraid to share really generously. If people can be successful, let's help them do that.
So let's talk a little bit about your book launch. So, if you could turn back time when you were publishing your book and getting ready to tell the world about it,
Yeah.
what is some marketing advice you would
Oh,
give yourself knowing what you know now?
let me tell you, and I feel like, when I self-published my book, my co-author, David Pitlick and I, we were committed. Like, we wanted to do everything right by our book. We did everything that we could do as if, if it had been traditionally published. So we had a professional editor and cover designer, professional formatter. Like, we wanted the very best for our book. And I would say the biggest mistake, the other thing that we did is we hired a book launch coach, much like you, Patty. We had a book launch coach. And it was one of the smartest things that we did. Even though I'm a marketer, I knew how to market, but I didn't know how to market a book. And so I knew how to do the things, but I didn't know how to do them in the right order or at the right time. But our fatal mistake was not having a post-launch marketing plan.
Oh,
We were so singularly focused on launch day that I would say within probably 10 days of launch, all of the momentum that we had built up for launch day had fizzled out. And all of a sudden I realized, oh, you have no plan to keep this momentum going. And I realized that, what so many authors and book launch coaches teach, which is start talking about your book, go on podcasts, be on stages, post about your book well before launch day. That needs to happen, even as you're in the final stages of getting your book ready to come out into the world. And that was my biggest mistake, because then I had to stop, create a plan, launch that plan, and had to, basically try to build the momentum all over again. And so that was a completely different, that's a different experience. And so I probably lost a good, 6-8 weeks while I was trying to ramp that plan up from a dead stop. Whereas if I'd had it in place beforehand, the momentum of launch day would have carried me into the post-launch book marketing. And so that's something I would really encourage. Like, you'll read that and hear that, you'll hear Patty say it. Make sure that you're talking about your book well before it's done. And there's a part of you that's going to resist that.
yeah.
Don't resist it. Do what she says, because you'll need that momentum to get you past those initial, heady days of launching the book and having it come out into the world.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's building that momentum. And then what happens is launch day comes, right? And you've been talking about it and you've been building up that momentum and sharing your free resources. And I even encourage some authors, like, share a free chapter and
Absolutely.
get people excited, give them a little bit of a taste of what to expect, right? Leave them wanting more. And then launch day happens and it's like, okay, now we got to keep it going, right? It's like, this is really the beginning. It's not the end. I like to
That's
say
exactly right. And
it's kind
I
of like
felt
birthing a baby. Like,
it's so true. And I felt, looking back, it's like, okay, you're a marketer, you should have known this. But in terms of the book of book marketing and sustaining that momentum, it was something that it just I didn't know that, and it didn't occur to me. And so, I always look back on that. The plan eventually came together, and I've been so fortunate to be able to, to help so many, and to, have this become just the launch pad for a great, new part of my business, which I'm thrilled about. But looking back, and that's what I would change. And anyone who ever asks me this exact question, it's plan for post day one. You've got a plan for that.
One last question. Okay. As we wrap up here. So, what was the last book you read? And do you recall how you found out about this book?
Wow. So, I've always got a couple of books that I'm reading. So the last book I read was actually the 25th anniversary edition of Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is a personal finance book.
Yeah.
I would recommend it highly. Like I said, it's the 25th anniversary edition of the book, so there's some new content in there. But it was such a fascinating book to hear someone tell essentially a memoir of their relationship and life with money, and how they became a financial success. And so I actually read the book with my husband, and it just encouraged such great conversation between the two of us. I'd heard of the book before, but
Yeah.
had never picked it up and read it. I'm part of a mastermind group, and in January we decided that we wanted to do kind of an every other month book club. And so the first book of the year was Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it was a great read. It's one of those books I feel like I need to read probably every other year or so.
Um, that's really interesting that you talked about the 25th anniversary, because I think even for authors out there who have a book, maybe even you, Aurora, maybe there's, a 5-year anniversary edition
Oh,
or
you know what, Patty, I think you were reading my mind a little bit. Like, I've had that conversation probably 3 times in the last probably 8 months with people about, doing kind of a revised and updated edition, because there's so much that I've learned
Yeah.
in the last, 5 years or so. The framework itself that I teach in the book hasn't changed, but the places where you can apply it are so different. The book came out before COVID,
Yeah.
before, virtual stages were actually a thing. We didn't do a lot of virtual type of speaking. Before the pandemic, when we talked about public speaking, we meant live and in person on a stage with a live audience. And now, because of, the way the world has transitioned and the way digital business has transitioned.
So Aurora, have you ever thought about relaunching your book, as you're coming to your 5-year point since you've written your book, and you were just talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and how you picked up his 25th year anniversary.
Yeah, I have actually, probably in the last 6 or 8 months, I've had conversations with people about, updating the book. The framework that I talk about and that I teach hasn't changed, but what has changed is what constitutes a stage. The book came out before the pandemic, and so before then, when we talked about stages, we literally meant you on a stage with a microphone and a live audience. Anything else was something else. But because of the pandemic and the digital world that exploded out of it, stages have a much broader definition. And so, for those authors that are thinking, I'm not ready for live eyeballs, virtual summits, podcasts, video interviews, webinars, guest coaching, and other, in people's programs, all of those constitute as stages. And so when I think about updating my book, I really want to be able to include more content around that, about how you navigate what stages are right for you, and how you build connections in communities, so that you can actually take advantage of opportunities. I mean, this particular stage that you and I are sharing today, it all happened because we attended a live event together and built a connection, and now here we are sharing a stage together. So there's lots of ways to make that happen. It all goes back to, finding and being connected to your core audience. But there's so much to be said for, finding that right stage that's right for you. No matter your nervous level, there is a stage that is right for you and your business and your book and your message.
Yes, and podcasts are so wonderful for authors, and I can't recall if I just said that earlier, but, every author should be out there doing podcasts, and this one happens to be on video. Not all of them are on video, so there's definitely options out there, but it's great because podcasts, they live forever, there's great SEO value, and you can always
Absolutely.
share them. Aurora, this has been so great. You have shared some amazing information and tips with us today. How can listeners get a hold of you?
Thank you so much, Patty. I've loved being here with you. And one of the things that's so important for a speaker, an author who wants to be a speaker, is to have what's called a speaker one sheet that basically summarizes all of the things that you can talk about and how to get in touch with you. And I have an incredible checklist that will guide you in how to create a perfect speaker one sheet. So if you'll go to Get Picked to Speak /checklist, you will be able to get that. getpickedtospeak.com /checklist. Join my email list and I will send you a copy of that checklist. I've had some great compliments about it. I think it's going to help you a ton. Get yourself set up to be successful in pitching yourself as a speaker.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time today, and I hope we can do this again.
I know that we will. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you.